Hello, welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Good evening, Paul Sickle here with you.
Hey, Paul, how was your Thanksgiving break?
It wasn't my favorite one of all time, just because I caught a little bit of a, I don't know if it was a flu or
the plague,
some sort of virus of some sort. At first I thought it was food poisoning, but now it's progressively worked its way through my family.
Yeah.
It doesn't all happen at once. My daughter and I were simultaneously sick. It was a weird bonding experience. She's only 15 months old.
You have that kinship?
Well, what was weird is that, God, I mean, it's the first time I've ever seen her, like, throw up. Or like really throw up.
It's pretty sad when they're that little and, like, very confused and they don't know what's happening.
What was interesting is on Friday night... Sorry, listeners. Anyway, here she's throwing up, and I had just thrown up an hour before. And then I settle her down, and then a few minutes later, I'm chucking again.
Right.
And then finally, I'm settling down, going back to sleep, and I wake up, and she's chucking.
Yeah.
And it's like the two, like finally, I was just like, hey, you go, little...
Yeah.
Kid, you know, you got to get rid of this virus just like I do.
We all got to get the monster out of our system.
And the two of us just kind of had a little kinship over it. This really sucks. We're both really sick, but we love each other and we're here for each other.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah.
I celebrated Thanksgiving up in Montreal where they don't have Thanksgiving this time of year, but, you know, the kids are off of school. We take the opportunity to go and see family. Mm-hmm. So we did that, and then, I caught a little bit of a cough cold thing on the last few days out there, so I'm still kind of working myself through that. So there's a lot of
you don't blame the international flight.
No, it had started before that. So, well, speaking of feeling a little better, we have now officially confirmed that the Democrats have picked up 40 seats in the House of Representatives, Paul.
And speaking of health care, that means that we should be able to protect pre-existing conditions, right?
I would hope so.
Unless they were to use a lame duck period to gut Obamacare.
Yeah. So
that's what Ted Cruz asked for.
Right.
Ted Cruz apparently asked for that. Did you read the article in Politico today?
No, but that does not surprise me at all. T.J. Cox today officially defeated Representative David Vlado out of California. They've lost 7 House seats in California, most of them in Orange County, of all places. Historically a very conservative area of Southern California. And that is kind of really eaten into the Republican Party. The Republican Party is essentially like on life support in California. It's really
that mirrors the Republicans' problems, even as far away as here, 2,000 miles away, where you see Governor-elect Evers won the election largely on the strength of voters. The sentiment switching somewhat in suburban counties. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, the suburban counties still went heavily for Walker, but a lot less so than they did in the past.
Right.
Areas in Northeast.
Waukesha County, I mean, being most among them, I mean, 66% I think for Walker. Right. But previous elections, I mean, he got well over 70% of the vote.
In the smaller cities in Northeast Wisconsin, which actually have a fair amount of kind of prosperous suburban type folks in the Fox Valley, they tended to break pretty heavily blue compared to what they had done before. Those areas actually have broken blue before, but not really since Obama's first run. Yeah. I mean, they didn't quite break blue, but they went a lot more blue than they had been. And if you look at a map, Charles Franklin, who we often criticize here, the Marquette pollster, has a nice map up that he tweeted. It's basically the southeastern third, like draw a line from, say, Green Bay down to, say, Janesville or Madison, right?
South central Wisconsin.
Right. And just that part that's southeast of that line.
Yeah.
So it's actually looks like a pretty small sliver of the state, but it's where about 70% of the people, maybe if not 80% of the people in the state live. All of it moved blue. And so he had a thing with whether moved red or moved blue. And so, like, for instance, Douglas County, which is by Superior, Wisconsin.
Right, actually the other end of the state.
It still voted for Evers by like 20 points, but it actually was a decline from what Mary Burke got.
Interesting.
So those counties would be shaded red. It's based on their movement.
Yeah.
So Waukesha County is really blue when you look at it marginally. Well, Waukesha County was the number one, I think, mover, or either that or Ozaukee County.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think you had a few in the Fox Valley, and then back again in southeast Wisconsin were the big movers, along with Dane County.
Yeah.
And so
for sure.
That's kind of tying what you see in California, where you have kind of suburban areas in Orange County, and now really most of California has at least a fairly well-educated contingent of people in most parts of California, even in the Central Valley. And that's why the Republicans are virtually extinct.
Ronald Reagan was governor there.
Right.
That's, Rich Nixon lived there. I mean, this used to be hot Republican turf.
Even when Obama first won, and he carried California solidly, right?
Right.
There were still almost 20 Republican House seats in the state of California, like Orange County, like you're saying. And now there's, I think, fewer than 10.
Well, it's not unlike what has happened in New England as well. I mean, you've seen more and more New England seats swinging away from Republicans in places like New Hampshire and Maine and some of these other places. I mean, Susan Collins, honestly, I don't even expect her to run for Senate in 2 years. I think the votes that she's taking now, I don't see how she comes back from them, to be honest. But I mean, that's
be next to impossible. I think
probably a topic for another day. But I mean, just to make an example,
still is rural and white.
True,
but still, the bulk of the people actually live really close to the Boston metro area.
There are a lot of commuters that go to larger urban areas.
Right. It's sort of like saying the Wisconsin population is very rural and white, but the bulk of the people actually live more in the urban areas.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Maine's a lot like Wisconsin, actually, in that sense. But it's interesting, it's just as we're, smarting over the victories here, and Democratic House seats in the South are virtually extinct as well.
I mean, that's been a trend that's been ongoing for the last couple decades.
Yeah, but it's peak performance right now. The only area where there's a little bit of improvement is some of the suburbs of Atlanta and maybe some suburban areas in Florida, which Florida's not really the South.
But I think you look at North Carolina, and the more north you get, obviously, that you get into Virginia, there is a resurgence of Democrats in those areas, largely because of people moving to those areas, probably from elsewhere in the country.
Right.
And same thing in Texas. I mean,
Virginia has more of an East Coast identity now than
because of Northern Virginia, the DC suburbs.
There's a Mid-Atlantic kind of identity
for sure. But you look at
like Maryland. Maryland was considered the South even when we were in high school.
Well, for sure.
Now Maryland is not. Nobody thinks of Maryland as the South anymore.
So taking it back to Wisconsin, we
should acknowledge that we lost one last night. But
in terms of the Mississippi race, I think that was a long shot.
We had a woman who celebrates lynchings win the election against a black man. In a state with the largest black population in the country.
The thing you can say about Espy is that he cut into the traditional margin of victory of a Republican that was running for Senate in that state. So he made it a 10-point game, which is probably a closer race than has happened in a long time.
36% of the voting age population is African American. Mm-hmm. He got 46%. He got virtually all of the African American vote, 95%. Okay, so he got, let's say, 34% straight up just from the African American vote.
Right.
He got 46% overall. So that means whites and other minorities, or non-African American minorities, there's 64% of the vote. That means all but 12% of them voted for this woman who says she'd go to a lynching.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty sick.
No, it's
Hyde Smith.
Yeah, Cindy Hyde Smith.
Cindy Hyde Smith. Keep an eye on her.
Yeah,
because she's a blight on our country that she made it into the Senate.
But we're not surprised. I mean, Mississippi is not the most progressive state in the country.
It's just embarrassing to me that I live in a country that would allow someone like her to take a seat in the U.S. Senate.
Absolutely. So bringing it back to Wisconsin, right? So you mentioned the lame duck session, which is about to be underway. The Republican caucus met yesterday.
Oh, you mean I meant to the federal one. You mean there's one here?
There is one here in the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin legislature.
Right, Walker lost, so now he and his buddies want to basically control the government even after they've been voted out. Okay, got it.
So they basically got a month to get done some last-minute housekeeping that they want to accomplish. At the top of the list, there will be a Supreme Court race in 2020 in spring. Sitting Justice Daniel Kelly will be up for re-election. And that currently is slated to take place on the same ballot as the primary for president. However, as we all know, the Republicans are probably going to re-nominate Donald Trump, and the Democratic primary will probably be very competitive. So they're very concerned that the turnout will skew Democrat that election, which could spell trouble for Mr. Kelly.
You mean if there's a Democratic primary that's competitive and Trump is a shoo-in?
Yeah, that maybe a
more
lot
Democrats
of people
will show
that aren't
up
going to come up to vote that are conservative.
Well, that figures.
So they want to move that primary. They want to create a new election, a special date for this other election, spend millions of dollars, and have a special election for Mr. Daniel Kelly. That's at the top of their list in terms of things they want to do. And they're being very transparent about it. They're saying like that the chances of Kelly being reelected will be better if they move this away from the ballot where the Democrats have their primary.
The phenomenon I just described.
Yeah. So, other than that,
they're being pretty much, and it's kind of shocking how transparent they've been.
Well, I think I think the arrogance that has been built up over the years because they've been able to get away with so much since 2010 when they've controlled everything. I don't think there's a lot of humility in this legislature. I think they're very used to getting their own way, which is why they don't really have any shame when it comes to giving quotes like that to the press about, like, yeah, of course, this is why we want to do it.
Well, and also Fitz isn't the most artful spokesperson.
Well, and they have the gerrymandering in place. So
Fitz being Scott Fitzgerald, the majority leader of the Senate.
Yes.
The guy who's in charge.
Yes. There's also the Kimberly-Clark bailout that's still on the docket. And
it's not going to pass,
everybody
knows that.
It's lacking the votes right now. It's probably not going to happen, so they're probably going to buck it to Evers and then put him on the hook for it. If Kimberly-Clark closes down a plant.
If they can, they'll try. I mean, the nice thing about that is Walker's gone out and said, look, if you don't pass the bill by the end of the month, I think we're going to lose these jobs. Walker will be on record saying he should have done it while I was governor.
Yeah.
They failed to do it while he was governor.
It goes back to the whole...
I kind of think you can blame Walker, at least, for that one.
Well, of course you can, because what happened with Foxconn last year...
He opened up the floodgates.
It set the precedent. Right. So now we have Kimberly-Clark who's like, well, if we can't get this bailout, we're going to have to shut down this plant and lay off X amount of workers. Okay, so we come to the rescue again,
Scott,
and we bail them out. And then what's next?
Scott, there's a few things in this room, okay? But I feel like there's an
elephant in the room that we haven't mentioned yet?
Like a huge elephant. Like an elephant, like a permanent elephant.
The Associated Press reported today, redistricting could be on the table as far as this lame duck session goes. And the Republicans could be looking at the next time redistricting comes around, which is after the 2020 census, that they could potentially take the governor out of the decision-making process and leave it up to the state legislature, which right now is a gerrymandered Republican legislature in both the Assembly and the Senate.
Right.
So it's problematic because case law historically here in the state of Wisconsin has said that anything around redistricting follows the same legislative process as a bill. That's what the state Supreme Court has ruled on 2 different occasions. However, this plays into what we just talked about previously about the Supreme Court race, is if you stack the Supreme Court and then all of a sudden challenge this and try to ram through some legislation and do your gerrymandering in a couple years, and then it gets challenged in the court, and then maybe you got a 5-2 majority in the state Supreme Court who can rule in your favor and say, like, oh, this is all hunky-dory.
Right, exactly. I don't know if it'll be 5-2, actually.
Well, I don't know. 3-6-1, I don't know.
Right now, it's going to happen. No, right now they have a 4-3. If we can hold the Abrahamson seat in...
next year.
April.
Yes.
4 months from now, actually. If we can hold that seat in 4 months, we will stay at 4-3. And if we were to win the seat in 2020, then we'd have a 4-3 majority.
Right. That's what they're afraid of.
That their whole redistricting scheme would be out the window.
Yeah, but that's why the top agenda item on this lame duck session is the Supreme Court election, because they're operating under the assumption that Abrahamson's seat is safe for a more liberal judge. Then they're looking at a situation where they could.
It really works together well. It's like it reminds me of how Act 10 worked together, right? You pass these different things. So one of the in these bills, and they all work together to create a common, very partisan end. Mm-hmm. So you're passing a bill to say the governor, the Democratic governor coming in, no longer has authority over redistricting, even though that's been established for, it looks like, a century.
And it's been affirmed, but going back into the 50s and 60s.
Right, in 1952, so that was almost 70 years ago.
Right.
And then it was reaffirmed almost 60 years ago, in 64, so that was 54 years ago. But of course, the question would come before the court sometime in the early 2020s, in about 2 years from now.
Yeah, the original ruling was 1952. The state Supreme Court ruled that redistricting plans need to follow the path of any other bill, meaning the maps are subject to gubernatorial approval or veto. And the same court issued another ruling in 64 saying that would be unreasonable to exclude the governor from the process.
So what's interesting is that they're saying they're not going to take the governor out of redistricting. What's interesting, though, is that I haven't seen a lot of Democratic Party people really focused on that. That's bothersome to me, because I don't think if you're afraid of something, the best solution is just to hope it goes away.
With this story, keep in mind, this story just broke this afternoon, so it's out there, and now the Republicans have to respond to it. And I feel like this will...
I think that's nonsense.
This will become more high profile.
It's nonsense to say it broke this afternoon. This has been understood for at least a week, if not two.
But it hasn't been reported on. This is the first reporting that I've read.
Why did it take this long for the Democrats to bring this out? I knew this was an issue.
Well, I think the timing. I think it's all about timing.
We didn't have a podcast, but frankly, I probably would have talked about it on a podcast.
But I think
we had a podcast within the last 2 weeks.
It's about the timing.
I knew this at least a week ago, if not more.
But again, they just met. The caucus just met yesterday to even discuss what the agenda items were for this lame duck session.
Anybody who knows which way the wind blows.
Yeah, but nobody's paying attention to this shit like last week. During Thanksgiving week.
Well,
I'm just saying, if you're a Democrat who's going to want to push this as a story or be quoted in this story, this is the week to do it. You're not going to do it last week when people are traveling or trying to avoid politics with their drunk family members on Thanksgiving.
They already had the caucus now.
They met as a caucus. Each body met. Yeah. And then there were meetings. There were meetings with Walker as well.
Yeah, they don't do this shit unless they have the votes. Let's just be honest. Let's get really into the elephant first. Let's get into the guts of this elephant for a minute.
Yeah.
Or into the snout, if you.
Yes.
How much can I torture the? Anyway, what this means is that Republicans always will be in charge of the legislature.
Yeah.
If you take the governor out.
Yeah. No,
basically, they can draw a permanent Republican majority. We see this year because the Democrats won by 8-9 points.
Yeah,
they got 200,000 more votes for the state assembly than the Republicans did, and they got 36 seats. The Republicans got
out 63. Of 99.
I mean, obviously, the Republicans did a great scalp blow. And we've talked about before how redistricting, and I had argued in the past that redistricting loses its effect after many years. It's true.
Yeah.
It's less effective today than it was 8 years ago, but it's still pretty fucking effective.
Well, as exemplified here.
If you can go lose an election by 200,000 votes and come out with 63% of the power.
Yeah.
They literally won 45% of the vote, and they have 63% of the power.
Yeah.
So basically, the Democrats need 1.5 votes for every percent of power they can get.
Right.
It's taxation without representation.
No, it pretty much is. And I mean, this needs to continue to be a hot button issue. And I mean, I'm glad that it's at least being reported on, because it's been under the radar that this could potentially be a thing on the agenda for the lame duck session. And my hope is that
it's Jim Crow taxation without representation. Let's be honest.
So hopefully the fact that the AP picked it up means that there's going to be more pressure as this lame duck session unfolds over the next month before Evers takes office.
It's unfolding next week. That's my argument. That the Democrats should have been bringing this up We knew this was coming. Of course it's happening. They're going to try to pass a redistricting, you want to call it reform, whatever. But where basically your vote for governor is no longer a check in the legislature. The Republicans are going to permanently be able to redistrict however the fuck they want. Right. So they will stay in the majority through 2030. And then guess what? They'll still be in the majority. And they'll be able to do it again and again and again. So basically, we're confirming Wisconsin as a one-party state in the legislature.
But you know what my other fear is, Paul? My other fear is
that's
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But my other fear is that
and the only thing that can stop it is the courts. What else is your fear?
My other fear is that this becomes the high-profile issue during the lame duck session, and everything else gets buried. The fact that they want to move the Supreme Court race in 2020, the fact that they want to dial back on rulemaking powers that the governor has, that will probably take all the oxygen out of the room. And meanwhile, as long as they don't do that, they're able to get away with moving the Supreme Court race. They're able to get away with moving powers away from Evers in terms of rulemaking and some of these other things. And I don't know what's going to happen with Kimberly Clark. Probably nothing.
That's a fine fear, but
I'm just saying they could use that as a means to get done what they already wanted to get done, because maybe they didn't want to. Maybe they didn't even have it on their agenda to begin with.
They had it on their agenda.
Maybe
everybody.
It's probably on their wish list, but maybe it wasn't a top ticket item.
So you really think that if we don't talk about it enough,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they could use this to their advantage.
Of course they can use it to their advantage.
So we need to talk about all of these things. I'm just saying, I'm afraid that the redistricting thing is going to take up all the headlines, and then they're able to accomplish the other things that we talked about.
The thing is this. You've got a state with a line item veto in the state constitution, so it's going to be hard for them to take a lot out.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, if they can give themselves a permanent majority,
then it's all for naught.
Right, who cares about the rest of it?
I feel like if they actually move forward with taking the governor out of the picture, I think this should have protests on the level of Act 10, if not greater. Because the impact of it is greater. I'm just saying it should. It should result in that.
They're going to pass it, and they're going to pass it a week from now. And it's there's nothing of the sort being planned in resistance.
I don't know that they're going to pass it, but I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on.
They very well may, and I can tell you on good authority, there'll be nothing like that.
Yeah,
like Act 10. It'll be a whimper.
Well, we won't have as much time.
We've known about this for at least, I would say, another week. We had enough time.
It's just at the press this afternoon.
Yeah, but people who could have been planning, could have put it in the press earlier, have known about it for a longer time. And by trying to snuff it under the rug or stuff it under the rug, whatever, I think they've done Wisconsin a big disservice.
Well, I'm sure we'll know more a week from now. So hopefully next week things will look a little better.
I hope so too.
We'll talk about it next time.
Okay. Bye.
All right, forward everybody.
Or backward.